The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the empty ballroom as I moved through the space with my cleaning cart, the wheels squeaking softly against the marble floor. It was nearly midnight, and the Grand Moretti Hotel had finally fallen silent after hosting yet another extravagant charity gala. My feet ached in my worn flats, and my lower back throbbed with that familiar pain that came from 12 hours of bending, scrubbing, and staying invisible. I paused near the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. The city stretched before me like a carpet of stars, so beautiful it made my chest ache. This view belonged to people who could afford the penthouse suites, not to girls like me who cleaned their rooms and emptied their trash. The ballroom was vast, elegant, with its polished parquet floors and silk-draped walls. During tonight's event, I'd caught glimpses of it through the service entrance. Women in gowns worth more than I'd earn in a year, men in tailored tuxedos, champagne flowing like water. Now it was just me, my cart, and the lingering scent of expensive perfume and white roses. I shouldn't have been alone here. Maria, the head housekeeper, had specifically assigned me to the East Wing guest rooms, but I'd finished early, and something had drawn me to the ballroom. Maybe it was the music I could still hear echoing in my memory, or maybe it was just exhaustion making me reckless. Before I could stop myself, I set down my cleaning supplies and stepped onto the dance floor. The marble felt cool even through my shoes as I closed my eyes and began to move, humming softly. It was a waltz I'd heard countless times while working events, a melody that had embedded itself in my bones. My movements were clumsy at first, self-taught from watching guests glide across this very floor. But as I relaxed into the rhythm, something shifted. For just a moment, I wasn't Bella Crawford, the orphan girl who'd aged out of St. Catherine's Convent at 18, with nothing but a donated suitcase and dreams too big for her circumstances. I was someone else, someone who belonged in beautiful places, who wore silk instead of polyester, who danced because she wanted to, not because she was cleaning up after others. I spun slowly, arms extended, imagining a partner who didn't exist. The fantasy was so vivid I could almost feel phantom hands at my waist, guiding me through the steps. My breath came faster as I moved, the exhaustion of the day melting away in the music only I could hear. You have good form, for someone who's never had lessons. The voice cut through my reverie like a blade. I froze mid-spin, my eyes flying open as ice flooded my veins. Standing in the doorway, half hidden in shadow, was Blake Moretti himself. I'd seen him before, of course. Everyone who worked at the Grand Moretti knew the owner by sight, even if we were trained to make ourselves invisible when he passed. But I'd never been this close, never been the sole focus of his attention. The distance between us collapsed the space until there was nothing but his gaze and my thundering heart. He was taller than I'd realized, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that filled out his black suit jacket with predatory grace. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and stark beauty. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Storm gray and penetrating, they seemed to see straight through my uniform to every secret I'd ever kept. Mr. Moretti. My voice came out as barely a whisper. I'm so sorry. I was just finishing the ballroom cleaning and You were dancing. He stepped fully into the light, and I caught the faint scent of his cologne, something expensive with notes of sandalwood and smoke. Don't apologize for something that wasn't a transgression. My hands twisted together nervously. I shouldn't be here. Maria assigned me to. I don't particularly care what Maria assigned you. He moved closer, his footsteps silent on the marble. What's your name? Bella. Bella Crawford, sir. How long have you worked here, Bella Crawford? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing pulse. 8 months, sir, in housekeeping. His gaze traveled over me, assessing but not leering. I was acutely aware of my appearance, the shapeless gray uniform that did nothing for my figure, my dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, my face bare of makeup because I couldn't afford it. I must have looked like exactly what I was, a nobody who'd stumbled into a place she didn't belong. "And before that?" he asked. "I grew up at St. Catherine's Convent. After I aged out, I worked at a diner in Queens, but it closed when I saw the opening here." I trailed off, unsure why I was telling him my life story. I was lucky to get the position. Something flickered in his eyes, not quite sympathy, but perhaps recognition of struggle. "St. Catherine's, I know it. They do good work there, caring for children no one else wants." The casual acknowledgement of my orphan status should have stung, but his tone held no judgment. If anything, there was a distant quality to his words, as if he was remembering something from long ago. "They gave me a home when I had none," I said quietly. "Sister Margaret taught me to read. Sister Claire helped me with math. They did their best. But they couldn't teach you to dance." Heat rose to my cheeks. "No, sir, I taught myself that. By watching." He stepped closer still, now just a few feet away. This close. I could see the faint scar along his jawline, the shadow of stubble that gave him a dangerous edge. He couldn't have been much older than 30, but he carried himself with the authority of someone who'd commanded respect since birth. "Show me," he said simply. I blinked, confused. "Sir?" "Show me how you dance when you think no one's watching." He extended his hand, palm up, an offer, not a demand. "Dance with me, Bella Crawford." My heart hammered against my ribs. This couldn't be happening. Men like Blake Moretti didn't dance with housekeeping staff. They barely acknowledged our existence. Yet here he was, hand outstretched, waiting for my answer. "I don't know how," I admitted. "Not properly. I've never had a partner." "Then I'll teach you." His lips curved into something that might have been a smile, though it held edges too sharp to be kind. "Consider it payment for the entertainment you've provided." I knew I should refuse. Should make an excuse, grab my cleaning cart, and flee back to the safety of the service areas where I belonged. But something in his eyes held me captive. Not threat, but curiosity. As if I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. Slowly, hardly believing my own boldness, I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, and suddenly, his other hand was at my waist, pulling me into the proper waltz position. The touch was respectful, professional, but I felt it everywhere. No one had held me like this before. No one had touched me with such deliberate intention. "Follow my lead," he murmured. "And don't think. Just feel." Then we were moving, and the world fell away. He led with absolute confidence, his steps sure and practiced. I stumbled at first, unused to having a partner, but he adjusted smoothly, guiding me through the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. My clumsy solo dancing transformed into something almost graceful as he swept me across the ballroom floor. "You're a natural," he said, his voice low. "You just needed someone to show you the way." I couldn't respond, too focused on not tripping over my own feet. But as we continued, something amazing happened. My body began to understand, to anticipate his movements. The music in my head grew louder, richer, until I could almost hear an invisible orchestra playing just for us. We spun past the windows, and I caught our reflection in the glass. For a moment, we looked like we belonged together, a elegant couple dancing in an empty ballroom. The illusion shattered as quickly as it formed, but the image lingered. "Why are you here?" I asked suddenly, the question escaping before I could stop it. "At this hour, I mean. In the ballroom." He didn't answer immediately, guiding us through another turn. "I own this hotel. I can be wherever I choose." "That's not an answer." His eyebrow rose slightly, and I realized my mistake. You didn't question Blake Moretti. You didn't challenge him. Fear lanced through me. What if I'd just gotten myself fired? But he surprised me. You're right, it's not. He paused, as if deciding how much truth to share. I couldn't sleep. Sometimes I walk the halls at night, checking on my property, and tonight I heard music where there shouldn't be any. I'm sorry. I'll be quieter next time. There won't be a next time. The words were gentle but final. Because from now on, if you want to dance, you'll do it properly, not alone, scavenging moments when you think no one's watching. I looked up at him, confused. I don't understand. I'm offering you a position, he said. My current executive assistant is leaving. Family obligations. I need someone observant, someone who notices details others miss, someone who can be trusted with discretion. My feet stopped moving, even as his continued, forcing me to catch up. Me? But I'm just what? A girl who taught herself to waltz by watching? Who cleans rooms with enough thoroughness that I've seen the reports? You're always early, always perfect. Who clearly has more potential than scrubbing toilets. His eyes held mine. I recognize talent when I see it, Bella. The question is whether you're brave enough to accept. It was insane, impossible. I had no qualifications for such a position, no experience beyond cleaning rooms and serving food. Yet something in his voice made it sound not just possible, but inevitable. The salary would be triple what you make now, he continued, as if sensing my hesitation. With benefits, including health insurance. Health insurance. The words alone made my breath catch. I'd been without coverage since leaving St. Catherine's, terrified every day that a simple illness could destroy me financially. Why me? I whispered. You don't know anything about me. I know you're here at midnight, exhausted but still dancing. I know you take pride in your work, even when it's thankless. I know you're trying to be more than your circumstances. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. And I know you have nowhere else to go, which means you'll be loyal. Loyalty is worth more than any resume. The brutal honesty should have offended me, but instead it felt almost refreshing. He wasn't pretending I was special or gifted. He was simply stating facts and offering a transaction. When would I start? The question emerged before I could fully process what I was agreeing to. Tomorrow. Maria will be informed of the change. My assistant will handle the paperwork. He glanced at the ornate clock on the wall. It's late. You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be demanding. Just like that, my life was changing. Again. First the convent, then the diner, then housekeeping. And now. What? Executive assistant to one of New York's most powerful and dangerous men. Because that's what Blake Moretti was, beneath the elegant suits and refined manner. I'd heard the whispers among the staff, the carefully vague references to his business dealings that extended far beyond hotels. The way certain men looked at him with fear and respect in equal measure. The fact that he owned half of Manhattan by age 30 through means no one discussed openly. As if reading my thoughts, he released me, stepping back to a respectful distance. A word of advice, Bella. You'll see and hear many things in your new position. Things that might frighten you or confuse you. But if you're smart, and I believe you are, you'll remember that discretion keeps you safe. Do you understand? I nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Good. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back. One more thing. That uniform doesn't suit you. Tomorrow, dress for your new role. Something professional. His gaze traveled over me once more, and this time there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite name. You deserve better than gray polyester. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the ballroom with my racing heart and the impossible offer that had just changed everything. I stood there for several minutes, trying to process what had happened, When I finally looked down, I realized my hands were trembling. Not from fear, but from something else. Anticipation, hope, the dangerous thrill of possibility. I made my way back to the small staff dormitory where I lived, a tiny room barely larger than a closet. But for the first time since leaving St. Catherine's, I felt like I was moving toward something instead of just surviving. As I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, I replayed the dance in my mind. The strength in Blake Moretti's hands. The way he'd looked at me, not as a servant, but as something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. Tomorrow, I would step into a new world. One far more dangerous and complicated than I could imagine. But tonight, I danced with a man who saw me, truly saw me, for perhaps the first time in my life. I closed my eyes and fell asleep to the ghost memory of music only I could hear, unaware that the waltz had only just begun, and the final steps would be far more complicated than anything I'd learned alone in that empty ballroom. The next morning arrived with the sharp urgency of a life divided into before and after. I stood in front of the small mirror in my dormitory room, staring at my reflection with something close to panic. Blake Moretti had told me to dress professionally, but my entire wardrobe consisted of my housekeeping uniforms, 2 pairs of jeans, 3 t-shirts, and a single dress I'd worn to leave St. Catherine's 2 years ago. The dress would have to do. I pulled it from the narrow closet, smoothing the wrinkles with my hands. It was navy blue, simple, with a modest neckline and hem that fell just below my knees. Nothing like what I'd seen the wealthy women at the hotel wearing, but it was clean and presentable. I'd have to buy more clothes eventually, but that would require my first paycheck from the new position, if I even survived my first day. I twisted my dark hair into a neat bun, applied the drugstore lip gloss that was my only makeup, and took a deep breath. The girl in the mirror looked terrified but determined. Good enough. Maria found me as I was leaving the dormitory. The head housekeeper's weathered face was drawn tight with disapproval as she blocked my path. So it's true, she said, her accent thickening with emotion. Mr. Moretti is pulling you from housekeeping. Yes, ma'am. I kept my voice steady, though my stomach churned. Maria had always been fair to me, but she ran her department with iron discipline. I'm sorry for any inconvenience. Sorry? She studied me with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Bella, do you have any idea what you're walking into? Mr. Moretti's world is not like ours. It's not safe for girls like you. I'll be his executive assistant, I said, confused. Taking calls, managing schedules. How dangerous can that be? Maria's expression softened into something almost pitying. Oh, mija, you really don't know, do you? She glanced around, then lowered her voice. Blake Moretti is not just a hotel owner. His family. They have connections. Deep ones. The kind that come with blood and loyalty tests. The Mafia. She was talking about the Mafia, though she wouldn't say the word aloud. I'd heard the rumors, of course, but had dismissed them as gossip. Now, seeing the genuine concern in Maria's eyes, reality settled over me like a cold blanket. He offered me a better position, I said quietly. Better pay. Health insurance. Maria, I've been one illness away from living on the street since I left the convent. How can I say no? She sighed deeply, reaching out to squeeze my shoulder. You can't. That's how he operates. He finds what people need and provides it. But nothing comes without a price, Bella. Remember that. And be careful. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Main office, 20th floor, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. V. Santos. Who's V. Santos? I asked Maria. Vincent Santos, Mr. Moretti's right hand. If Blake is the king, Vincent is the executioner. She released my shoulder. Go. Don't keep them waiting. And Bella? Keep your head down and your mouth shut about anything you see or hear. It's the only way to stay safe. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt eternal. I watched the numbers climb, each floor taking me further from the world I knew and closer to something I couldn't yet comprehend. My reflection in the polished brass doors showed a girl trying very hard to look confident and failing miserably. The 20th floor was nothing like the public areas of the hotel. The hallway was quieter, more subdued, with thick carpet that muffled footsteps and walls paneled in dark wood. Expensive art hung at precise intervals. Original pieces, I realized, not prints. This was the heart of Blake Moretti's empire, and it hummed with restrained power. A woman in her 40s sat at a desk outside a set of imposing double doors. She looked up as I approached, her sharp gaze cataloging every detail of my appearance in seconds. "Bella Crawford?" Her voice was crisp, professional. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Teresa. I've worked with Mr. Moretti for 12 years, and I'll be training you before I leave." She stood, gesturing for me to follow. "Rule 1. Punctuality is non-negotiable. You're 3 minutes early. Good. Rule 2. Discretion is everything. What you see and hear in this office stays in this office. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Call me Teresa." She led me into an outer office that was elegant but functional. "This will be your desk. You'll manage Mr. Moretti's calendar, screen his calls, prepare briefing documents, and handle any tasks he assigns. The days are long, but the pay reflects that." She spent the next hour walking me through systems and protocols, speaking so quickly I barely kept up. Blake Moretti's schedule was color-coded by priority and type of meeting. Red meant urgent and private. Black meant business that required absolute discretion. Blue meant legitimate operations, hotel management, real estate, investments. I noticed immediately that there were far more red and black appointments than blue. "What do the red meetings involve?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Teresa's expression didn't change. "You'll learn that some questions are better left unasked. Your job is to facilitate, not to understand. Can you do that?" I nodded, though uncertainty coiled in my stomach. At 9 o'clock, the double doors to Blake's office opened, and the man himself emerged. He looked different in daylight, still devastatingly handsome, but harder somehow. All the softness from last night's unexpected waltz burned away by morning. He wore another impeccable suit, this one charcoal gray, and his storm-cloud eyes swept over me with the same assessing quality as before. "Miss Crawford," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "I trust Teresa is bringing you up to speed?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Come with me. You'll shadow me today, observe how things work." He glanced at Teresa. "Clear my afternoon. I'll be showing Bella the operation." Something passed between them, a look I couldn't interpret. Teresa simply nodded. "Of course." I followed Blake through corridors I'd never seen before, my sensible shoes clicking against marble and hardwood. We descended to the 15th floor, which required a special keycard to access. The hallway here was different, more secure, with cameras at every junction and heavy doors that locked with audible clicks. "This is where we handle sensitive business," Blake explained, his hand at the small of my back, guiding me forward. The touch was professional, but somehow intimate. A reminder of last night's dance. "You'll need clearance to access this floor. Vincent will arrange it." He pushed open a door to reveal a conference room where several men sat around a long table. They looked up as we entered, and I felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure. These weren't hotel executives or business partners. These were predators in expensive suits, and I was a rabbit who'd wandered into their den. "Gentlemen," Blake said smoothly, "this is Bella Crawford, my new executive assistant. She'll be handling my schedule and correspondence. Treat her with the same respect you'd show me." The message was clear. I was under his protection. But from what? A man at the head of the table stood, tall, with silver-threaded dark hair and cold eyes that seemed to catalog my every weakness. Vincent Santos, he introduced himself, extending his hand. Welcome to the family, Miss Crawford. Family. The word carried weight beyond its surface meaning. I shook his hand, trying not to flinch at the strength of his grip. Thank you, Mr. Santos. Call me Vincent. We don't stand on formality here. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Blake speaks highly of you. He says you're observant, discreet. Those are valuable qualities in our line of work. I'll do my best to meet expectations, I managed. The meeting that followed was conducted partially in Italian and partially in English, with discussions about shipments, territories, and payments that made my skin prickle with unease. I understood perhaps a third of what was said, but I understood the undercurrent perfectly. This was not legitimate business. This was the shadowy empire Maria had warned me about. Blake seemed completely at ease, commanding the room with quiet authority. When men twice his age deferred to his judgment, I realized just how powerful he truly was. This wasn't inherited authority. He'd earned it, probably through means I didn't want to imagine. After an hour, the meeting concluded. The men filed out, each nodding respectfully to Blake and eyeing me with varying degrees of curiosity and calculation. Only Vincent lingered. She's young, Vincent observed once we were alone. Innocent. Are you sure this is wise? My decisions don't require your approval, Vincent. Blake's voice was pleasant, but edged with steel. Bella will learn what she needs to learn, and she'll understand the importance of loyalty. Won't you, Bella? Both men looked at me, and I felt pinned by their combined attention. Yes, sir, I said softly. I understand. Good. Blake checked his watch. We have lunch with the city council liaison at noon. Bella will join us. She needs to learn all aspects of the operation. Vincent's eyebrow rose. All aspects? Blake, she's been here one day. Exactly. Better she understands immediately what world she's entered. Blake turned to me, his expression unreadable. You'll need a wardrobe upgrade. I've arranged for a stylist to meet you at 3. Teresa has the details. Mr. Moretti, I can't accept, I began, but he cut me off with a look. Your appearance reflects on me now. Consider it a business expense. His tone brooked no argument. Besides, you can't attend events in the same dress every day. Heat flooded my cheeks. He'd noticed my limited wardrobe, of course. Nothing escaped those sharp gray eyes. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind. The lunch with the city council liaison revealed the extent of Blake's influence. The man was clearly in his pocket, dancing around delicate topics while Blake smiled pleasantly and reminded him of past favors with subtle menace. I sat silently, taking mental notes, learning the language of polite threats. At 3, a woman named Adriana arrived at the office with an assistant and rolling racks of clothing. She eyed me critically, then smiled. Finally, Blake brings me a challenge. Let's make you unforgettable, darling. The next 2 hours were a blur of fabrics, measurements, and accessories. Adriana dressed me in designer pieces I'd only ever seen in magazines, tailored suits, silk blouses, elegant dresses. Each outfit was carefully selected to project professional confidence while remaining appropriate for my new role. You have good bone structure, Adriana observed, studying me from multiple angles. And these eyes, very unusual. Violet undertones and brown. Rare. She turned to Blake, who'd returned to observe the final selections. She'll turn heads, this one. Are you sure you want that kind of attention on your assistant? I want her to look the part, Blake replied, his gaze traveling over me in one of Adriana's selected outfits, a fitted black dress with a pearl gray blazer. Perfect. We'll take everything. Blake, this is too much, I protested weakly. The price tags I'd glimpsed had made my head spin. Consider it an investment in your future. He nodded to Adriana. Have everything delivered to her quarters today. After Adriana left, Blake gestured for me to sit. He poured 2 glasses of scotch, one for himself, one for me, and settled into the chair across from his desk. You've had quite a day, he observed. How are you processing it? I stared at the amber liquid in my glass, gathering courage. I'm processing that you're not just a hotel owner, that your business extends into other areas, and that I'm now part of something I don't fully understand. Would you like to understand? His eyes held mine, challenging. I'm not sure. Maria said some questions are better left unasked. Maria is wise. He sipped his scotch. But since you're my assistant now, you deserve some truth. Yes, my interests extend beyond hotels. My family has certain traditional businesses. They're profitable, but not always strictly legal. Does this frighten you? Yes, I admitted. But I'm more frightened of going back to scrubbing toilets and wondering if I'll be able to afford medicine when I get sick. A smile ghosted across his lips. Honest. I appreciate that. He leaned forward, his gaze intensifying. Here's what you need to know, Bella. The world is full of wolves. I'm one of them. But I protect what's mine. Work for me, stay loyal, keep your discretion, and you'll want for nothing. Betray me, and... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I understand, I whispered. Do you? He stood, moving around the desk to stand before me. Because once you're truly in my world, Bella, there's no going back to safety. People will see you as leverage against me. They'll try to use you, hurt you, turn you. This isn't just a job. It's a life sentence. The warning should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself asking, then why offer it to me? You could have anyone. Because you danced alone in an empty ballroom. His hand reached out, tilting my chin up to meet his gaze. Because you're not what you appear to be. You're stronger than you know, Bella Crawford. And I find myself curious about who you'll become once you stop hiding. The air between us crackled with something I couldn't name. It wasn't quite attraction, too dangerous for that simple label. It was recognition, perhaps. 2 people who'd learned to survive in harsh worlds, now circling each other with wary fascination. A knock at the door broke the moment. Vincent entered without waiting for permission, his expression grave. We have a situation. Dmitry Volkov knows about the Harbor District acquisition. Someone talked. Blake's entire demeanor shifted, softening replaced by cold fury. How? Still determining that. But he's demanding a meeting. Tonight. Vincent's gaze flickered to me. Should we discuss this privately? No, Bella stays. Blake turned to me. This is your education, Miss Crawford. Pay attention. For the next hour, I witnessed something that would have been terrifying if it hadn't been so mesmerizing. Blake Moretti, the man who gently taught me to waltz, transformed into something else entirely. He orchestrated responses to the threat with surgical precision, his voice never rising but somehow more menacing for its calm. He made calls in rapid Italian, issued orders that I suspected involved violence, and planned countermoves with Vincent that revealed years of strategic thinking. And through it all, he seemed to forget I was there. Or perhaps he wanted me to see this side of him, a test of some kind. When it was over, and Vincent had left to implement their plan, Blake turned back to me. Questions? Will someone die because of what was discussed here? The words emerged steadier than I felt. Possibly. Does that trouble you? Yes. I met his gaze. But I understand it's not my place to judge your methods. No, he agreed. It's not. But I respect your honesty. He checked his watch. It's late. Go back to your quarters. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll continue your education. I stood to leave, but his voice stopped me at the door. Bella? I turned back. Yes? You did well today. Better than I expected. Something in his expression softened almost imperceptibly. You might actually survive this. As I made my way back to my room, which now seemed impossibly small after a day in Blake Moretti's world, I realized that Maria had been right. I'd stepped into something far more dangerous than I'd imagined. But unlike Maria, I didn't have the luxury of stepping back. I was in Blake's web now, and like all spiders, he wouldn't release his prey willingly. The only question was whether I'd be devoured or transformed into something equally dangerous. That night, as I tried to sleep in my narrow bed, I replayed the day in fragments. Blake's hand at my back, Vincent's calculating gaze, the casual discussion of violence, the expensive clothes now hanging in my tiny closet, and beneath it all, the memory of dancing, the moment before everything changed. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new dangers. But tonight, I was still just Bella Crawford, the orphan girl who'd learned to waltz by watching. By the time I finally drifted off, I didn't yet know that I'd already been watched for far longer than a single evening, that my presence at the Grand Moretti wasn't the coincidence I'd assumed. That the scars on my back, the ones I hid even from myself, held secrets that would soon destroy or transform everything. The web was tightening, and I was at its center, dancing alone no more. 3 weeks into my new position, I'd learned to navigate Blake Moretti's world with increasing confidence. The wardrobe Adriana had selected hung in my closet. I'd been moved to a larger apartment on the 10th floor, a transition Blake had arranged without consultation, and I wore the armor of expensive fabric like a second skin. Teresa had finished training me and departed with tears in her eyes and a generous severance package that revealed Blake's unexpected generosity to those who served him loyally. Now I was alone in the role, managing the complex machinery of his legitimate empire, while carefully ignoring the shadow operations that hummed beneath the surface. I'd become skilled at not seeing certain visitors, not hearing certain conversations. My survival depended on selective blindness, but some things couldn't be unseen. It was a Tuesday morning when everything began to unravel. I arrived at the office at 7:30 as usual, coffee in hand, ready to prepare for Blake's 8 o'clock briefing. The outer office was quiet, but Blake's door stood ajar. Unusual, since he was meticulous about security. "Mr. Moretti?" I called, setting down my coffee. "I'm here early if you need—" "Come in, Bella." His voice was controlled, but I heard the edge beneath it. I pushed the door open and froze. Blake stood by the windows overlooking the city, his back to me, shoulders tense. But it was the other man in the room who captured my attention. Elderly, perhaps 70, with white hair and eyes that reminded me of winter storms. "Miss Crawford." The old man greeted me with a slight accent. "I've been hoping to meet you. I am Matteo Rossi." The name meant nothing to me, but Blake's reaction told me everything. He turned sharply, his expression thunderous. "Matteo, I told you this conversation was private. And I told you the girl deserves to know the truth." Matteo's gaze fixed on me with unsettling intensity. "Tell me, Miss Crawford, do you know anything about your biological parents?" My throat went dry. "No, sir. I was left at St. Catherine's as an infant. The sisters said there was no note, no information." "But there were marks, yes? On your back?" Blood rushed in my ears. How could this stranger know about the scars? I'd never shown them to anyone, too ashamed of the ugly marks that marred my skin from shoulder to hip. The sisters had told me they were birthmarks, but I'd always suspected something darker. "Bella, you don't have to answer him," Blake said, moving toward me protectively. "Matteo is leaving now. I'm not leaving until she knows. The old man pulled a photograph from his jacket pocket and held it out to me. This was taken 26 years ago. Does she look familiar? With trembling hands, I took the photograph. It showed a young woman, perhaps 19 or 20, with dark hair and eyes that could have been my own. She was beautiful, laughing at the camera, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. But it was the man beside her that made my heart stop. He was younger in the photo, but unmistakable. Dark hair, sharp features, and those distinctive gray eyes that now watched me with complicated emotions. "Blake?" I whispered, looking between the photograph and the man before me. "This is you?" "No." Blake's voice was hard. "That's my father, Antonio Moretti. He died 25 years ago." The room tilted sickeningly. The pregnant woman in the photo. "Who is she?" "Her name was Isabella Romano," Matteo said gently. She was the daughter of Victor Romano, Blake's father's greatest rival. Their families had been at war for decades, but Antonio and Isabella fell in love anyway. A Romeo and Juliet story, but with an even more tragic ending. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was saying. What happened to her? "She died giving birth." Matteo's eyes filled with sorrow. Victor Romano arranged her murder to prevent her from bearing Antonio's child, a child who would have been heir to both empires, who could have ended the war. But the assassins failed to find the baby. The midwife, Sister Margaret, took the child to St. Catherine's for safekeeping. Sister Margaret. My Sister Margaret, who'd taught me to read, who'd braided my hair, who'd watched me leave at 18 with tears streaming down her weathered face. "You're saying—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "You're Isabella Romano's daughter," Blake said, his voice flat. "Antonio Moretti's daughter. Which makes you my half-sister." The words hit me like physical blows. Half-sister. The man I'd been having increasingly complicated feelings about. The man whose rare smiles made my heart race. The man who'd held me in his arms while we danced. Was my brother. "No," I whispered, backing toward the door. "No, that's not possible. The sisters would have told me." "The sisters were protecting you," Matteo explained. "Victor Romano spent years searching for you. If he'd found you as a child, you would have been killed to prevent you from ever claiming your heritage. But Victor died 3 years ago, and now—" He gestured to Blake. "Now the truth must come out." "Must it?" Blake's voice was dangerous. "And why is that, Matteo? Why now, after 25 years of successfully hiding her?" The old man's expression hardened. "Because there are others who know, who've been watching her. The scars on her back aren't birthmarks, child. They're a map." "A map?" I heard myself ask from very far away. Victor Romano hid a fortune before he died. Money, documents, information that could destroy or empower several families. He encoded the location as a tattoo on his infant granddaughter, knowing that someday someone might find her and unlock the secret. Matteo's voice was gentle but urgent. 3 days ago, someone took a photograph of your back. They know what you are, Bella. They know what you carry. And they will come for you." The floor seemed to dissolve beneath my feet. Everything I'd thought I knew about my identity, my place in the world, was a lie. I wasn't just Bella Crawford, the orphan. I was Isabella Romano's daughter, Antonio Moretti's daughter, a pawn in a game that had been playing out for decades before my birth. And I was Blake's sister. "I need to leave," I managed, reaching blindly for the door handle. "I need to. You can't leave." Blake was suddenly there, his hands on my shoulders, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Bella, listen to me. If what Matteo says is true, you're in danger. Serious danger. The only safe place for you is here, under my protection." "Your protection?" I laughed, the sound harsh and brittle. "You're my brother. Don't you understand what that means?" Everything I felt, Everything I thought was happening between us. "Wasn't what you think," he cut in, his jaw tight. "Because Mateo's information is incomplete." He released me and crossed to his desk, pulling a file from the locked drawer. He handed it to me, and I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were documents, old and yellowed with age. Birth certificates, medical records, DNA test results. My eyes skimmed the pages, trying to make sense of the information, until I found the line that changed everything again. Paternity test results. Antonio Moretti, negative match. What? I looked up at Blake, confusion replacing shock. "My father didn't sire you," Blake said quietly. "He loved your mother, truly loved her, but you weren't his biological child. Isabella was already pregnant when they met, by whom we never discovered. She died before she could tell anyone the truth." Relief and disappointment warred in my chest. Not his sister, but still a Romano, still carrying secrets on my skin, still in danger. "Then who was my father?" I whispered. "We don't know, but we will find out." Blake moved closer again, his presence overwhelming. "What matters now is keeping you safe, and unfortunately, that means you need to disappear. New identity, new location, protection until we can neutralize the threat." "Or," Mateo interjected, "she could embrace her heritage, claim what her grandfather hid, use it to secure her position in this world rather than running from it." Blake turned on him savagely. "She's not a weapon for you to use in your power plays, old man. She's an innocent caught in a web she didn't weave." "She's a Romano," Mateo shot back. "That's both curse and crown, whether she accepts it or not. The information on her back could bring down 3 families or elevate her to queenship. That choice should be hers." They argued, their Italian rapid and heated, while I stood frozen in the center of the room. Everything I'd thought I was had been stripped away. The simple life I'd imagined, maybe someday a family, a home, safety, evaporated like morning mist. "Stop." My voice cut through their argument, surprising them both into silence. "Both of you, just stop." I moved to the windows, looking out at the city I'd called home without ever really belonging to it. 25 years of life, and I'd been living a lie. 25 years of carrying secrets literally inscribed on my flesh. "I need to see them," I said finally. "The scars. I need to know what they say." "Bella," Blake began, but I cut him off. "It's my body, my skin, my choice." I turned to face them, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. If I'm going to be hunted, I deserve to know why. If I'm carrying something valuable, I deserve to know what. And if I'm a Romano, I swallowed hard. Then I need to understand what that means. Mateo smiled, a flash of approval in his ancient eyes. "There's the fire. I knew it had to be there, buried under all that careful invisibility." "I know someone who can read the map," Blake said reluctantly. "An old scholar who specializes in Romano family history. But Bella, once we unlock this secret, everything changes. There's no going back to the life you had." "What life?" I laughed bitterly. "Working as a maid? Pretending to be nobody? That was never really my life, was it? It was just a holding pattern until the truth caught up with me." For the rest of the day, Blake made arrangements while I sat in his office, numb with shock and too many revelations. He canceled all meetings, positioned extra security, and made call after call in Italian too rapid for me to follow. As evening fell, a woman arrived, ancient and tiny, with eyes sharp as cut glass. Professor Elena Caruso. Blake introduced her, an expert in historical ciphers and Romano family history. "Show me," she commanded without preamble. With Blake and Mateo discreetly turning their backs, I removed my blouse and the camisole beneath, keeping my front covered while exposing my scarred back to the professor's scrutiny. I felt her aged fingers trace the marks, following patterns I'd never understood. Dio mio, she breathed. It's beautiful. Terrible, but beautiful. What does it say? I asked, my voice muffled by my arms crossed protectively over my chest. It's a map of Manhattan, encoded in what appears to be random scarring. But see here. Her finger pressed into my left shoulder blade. And here. Another press at my lower back. These are coordinates. And this symbol near your spine, it's the Romano family seal, hidden in what looks like natural tissue damage. Where does it lead? Blake asked, his voice tight. Professor Caruso traced one final pattern. To a building that no longer exists. The old Romano estate was demolished 15 years ago. But... She paused, considering. If Victor hid something there, it would be in the foundation, the underground levels that were sealed rather than destroyed. The city archives would have building plans, Matteo said immediately. I can have them by morning. No. Blake's voice was hard. We do this carefully. If there are others watching Bella, looking for the same information, we can't tip them off. We need to move slowly, deliberately. We don't have time for slow, a new voice said from the doorway. We all turned to find Vincent Santos standing there, his expression grave and a laptop in his hands. You need to see this. He set the laptop on Blake's desk, turning it so we could see the screen. It showed a series of photographs, surveillance images taken with telephoto lenses. They were all of me, walking to work, sitting in the park during lunch, and, most damning, one taken through my apartment window of my bare back, the scars clearly visible. When were these taken? Blake demanded, his voice lethal. Starting 3 weeks ago. I only discovered them because I've been monitoring Romano family chatter since Bella's promotion. Vincent looked at me with something almost like sympathy. They know who you are, and they're moving to acquire you before we can secure the treasure. Who are they? I managed to ask. The Volkov family, mostly. Dmitri has been trying to weaken Blake's position for months. If he gets the Romano fortune first... He won't. Blake's voice was absolute. Bella, pack your things. You're moving into the penthouse tonight. 24-hour protection. I can't just... You can and you will. His eyes locked with mine, storm gray and uncompromising. I won't let anyone hurt you, Bella. Whether you're my responsibility by blood or by choice, you're under my protection now. That's not negotiable. The fierce possessiveness in his voice sent shivers down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. Despite everything, the revelations, the danger, the complicated truth about my heritage, I trusted him. This man who'd pulled me from obscurity, who'd seen potential in a dancing housemaid, who now looked at me like I was something precious worth defending. Okay, I whispered. I'll go with you. Relief flashed across his features, quickly masked. Vincent, coordinate with security. Matteo, thank you for the information, but your involvement ends here. I'll handle Bella's protection personally. After they'd left, and Professor Caruso had departed with promises of discretion, I stood alone with Blake in his office. The setting sun painted everything in shades of amber and gold, softening the hard edges of the day. Are you all right? He asked finally. I don't know. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the room. My entire identity is a lie. I'm descended from criminals. I have a treasure map scarred into my back, and someone's been watching me for weeks. I laughed weakly. So no, I don't think I'm all right. He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides and pulled me into his arms. The embrace was unexpected, protective rather than romantic, but I melted into it anyway. His chest was solid beneath my cheek, his heart beating steady and sure. I won't let anyone hurt you, he murmured into my hair. I promise you that, Bella. Whatever else happens, you're safe with me. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But as I stood in the circle of Blake Moretti's arms, protected by the most dangerous man in New York, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger wasn't outside these walls. It was the way my heart beat faster when he held me. The way his presence had become the only thing that felt real and safe in a world turned upside down. The way I was beginning to need him with a desperation that went far beyond professional loyalty or gratitude. I was falling for a man who'd pulled me into his world of shadows and violence, a man who saw me as both weapon and treasure, a man whose protection came with strings I was only beginning to understand. And somewhere in the darkness, enemies were gathering, drawn by the secrets inscribed on my flesh like moths to a deadly flame. The negotiation wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about who I would become in the aftermath, victim, pawn, or something far more dangerous. The penthouse was a study in controlled luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered 360-degree views of Manhattan, the city sprawling beneath us like a carpet of glittering diamonds. The interior was all clean lines and expensive simplicity, dark woods, cream leather, abstract art that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. It was beautiful and cold, like living inside a very expensive cage. Blake had given me the guest wing, a suite larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in, with a bedroom, sitting room, and bathroom that featured a shower with 6 different heads and a tub deep enough to swim in. My meager belongings looked lost in the massive walk-in closet, though Blake had already arranged for additional clothing to be delivered. "You'll be safe here," he'd told me that first night, standing in the doorway with his tie loosened and exhaustion lining his face. Vincent and his team are positioned throughout the building. No one gets to the penthouse without passing through 3 security checkpoints. "Thank you," I'd whispered, overwhelmed by everything. He'd hesitated, as if wanting to say something more, then simply nodded. "Try to rest. Tomorrow, we begin planning." But sleep had been impossible. I'd lain awake in the enormous bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, feeling the weight of secrets literally carved into my skin. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photographs Vincent had shown us, proof that I'd been watched, stalked, studied like a specimen under glass. Now, 3 days later, I stood in Blake's study while he, Vincent, and Matteo, who'd refused to stay away despite Blake's orders, examined architectural plans spread across the mahogany desk. The old Romano estate had 3 basement levels, Professor Caruso explained via video call on Blake's laptop. The 3rd level was Victor's personal vault. City records show it was sealed with concrete during demolition, but the structure itself remains intact. "How do we access it without drawing attention?" Vincent asked, his finger tracing the blueprints. "We don't," Blake said flatly. "We'd need excavation equipment, permits, a construction crew. Too many variables, too many people who could talk or be bought." "Then we're at an impasse," Matteo observed. "The treasure exists but remains inaccessible." "Not necessarily." I spoke for the first time that morning, surprising them all. "What if we don't need to access the physical location?" Blake looked at me sharply. "Explain." I moved closer to the desk, studying the map on my back that Professor Caruso had photographed and decoded. Victor hid something valuable, yes. But think about the era, mid-90s, before digital security became sophisticated. Whatever he hid, it wasn't just money. Money can be traced, frozen, seized. "Documents," Vincent said, understanding dawning. "Leverage." "Exactly. Information about other families, politicians he controlled, judges on his payroll. That's what keeps power alive even after death." I looked at Blake. What if the map doesn't just show where the treasure is hidden, but also gives us the key to accessing digital copies? Victor was paranoid but smart. He would have had backups. Matteo's weathered face broke into a smile. "The girl is clever. Victor did maintain offshore servers, encrypted archives that we could never crack. But if the code is hidden in the map itself... Professor, Blake addressed the laptop. Can you analyze the mathematical patterns in the scarring? Look for numerical sequences that might serve as encryption keys? I'll need a few days, she replied. But yes, it's possible. After the call ended and Matteo departed with promises to research Victor's old digital infrastructure, Vincent excused himself to coordinate security sweeps, leaving Blake and me alone in the study. That was good thinking, Blake said quietly, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. You're adapting quickly to this world. I don't have much choice. I accepted the glass, whiskey, expensive and smooth, and took a small sip. Adapt or become a victim. You were never going to be a victim. He studied me over the rim of his glass. From the moment I saw you dancing alone, I knew you were stronger than you appeared. Heat crept up my neck at the memory. It felt like a lifetime ago, that night in the ballroom. The girl who'd danced then had been so innocent, so naive about the world she was entering. I'm not that girl anymore, I said softly. No. His gray eyes were intense, unreadable. You're becoming something else, something more dangerous. Is that a compliment or a warning? Both. He set down his glass and moved closer, invading my space in a way that made my breath catch. Bella, we need to discuss what happens next. Even if we crack the encryption, even if we access Victor's treasure, you'll still be a target. Your very existence is a threat to people who've built their power on secrets. So what are my options? Witness protection? A new identity in some small town in Montana? The thought made something in my chest clench painfully. Leaving meant leaving him, and I'd only just found. What? Safety? Purpose? Or something more dangerous that I couldn't name? There's another option. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek in a gesture that was becoming familiar. You could claim your heritage fully, become not just Antonio's daughter or Victor Romano's granddaughter, but a power in your own right. How? I whispered, trapped by his proximity and the warmth in his touch. Marry into protection. Ally yourself with a family strong enough to shield you. His hand moved to the nape of my neck, his thumb tracing small circles that sent shivers down my spine. Marry me, Bella. The room tilted. What? It's practical, he continued, his voice low and persuasive. As my wife, you'd be untouchable. The Moretti name would protect you where nothing else could. And with access to Victor's information, you'd bring valuable assets to the Alliance. You want to marry me for my treasure map? I tried to sound offended, but something else colored my voice. Hurt, perhaps, that he'd reduced our connection to mere strategy. His eyes flashed. Don't be naive. You know this isn't just about the map. Then what is it about? I challenged, anger giving me courage. Because 3 weeks ago you were teaching me to waltz and looking at me like, and now you're proposing a business arrangement? Everything in my world is a business arrangement, he said harshly. Love is a luxury that gets people killed. But partnership, alliance, mutual benefit, those create stability. How romantic. I tried to pull away, but his hand tightened on my neck, not painfully, but insistently. You want romance, Bella? You want me to pretend this is some fairy tale? His other hand came up to cup my face, holding me captive. Fine, I want you. I've wanted you since that first night. And every day since has only made it worse. You're in my head, under my skin. I can't think straight when you're near, and I worry obsessively when you're not. Is that romantic enough? My heart hammered against my ribs. Blake, but wanting you doesn't change reality, he continued relentlessly. My world is dangerous. Marriage would give us both what we need. You get protection and legitimacy. I get a partner who's proven herself intelligent and adaptable. And yes, we get each other. Is that such a terrible bargain? I should have said yes. Should have been horrified by the cold calculation beneath the heated words. But looking into his storm-gray eyes, I saw something he was trying to hide. Vulnerability, need, fear that I'd refuse him. What about children? I asked, testing him. Heirs to your empire? Something flickered across his face. If that's what you want eventually. But first we survive. We secure your position, eliminate the threats against you, and build something stable. And if I say no? His jaw tightened. Then I protect you anyway. But it will be harder, messier. Marriage creates legal boundaries that even my enemies respect. Without it, you're fair game. The implicit threat wasn't lost on me. He would protect me either way, but cooperation would make both our lives easier. It was manipulation wrapped in honesty, and somehow that made it more compelling than any romantic declaration. I need time to think, I said finally. You have until tomorrow. He released me, stepping back with visible effort. The Volkov family is hosting a charity gala tomorrow night. We've been invited, a show of good faith after our recent territorial disputes. I need an answer before then, because if you agree, I want to announce our engagement publicly. Nothing protects like public declaration. After he left, I collapsed onto the leather sofa, my mind spinning. Marriage. To Blake Moretti. The man who'd pulled me from obscurity, who'd revealed my true heritage, who looked at me like I was simultaneously the solution to all his problems and the cause of new ones. I pulled out my phone and stared at the contact I'd saved but never called. Sister Margaret at St. Catherine's. She deserved to know I'd learned the truth, deserved an explanation for why I might disappear into Blake's world completely. But when I dialed, the voice that answered wasn't Sister Margaret's. Bella. The elderly nun's voice was weak, strained. I hoped you'd call. I'm so sorry, child. I never wanted you to find out this way. Sister Margaret, what's wrong? Are you ill? Cancer, stage 4. The doctors say weeks, maybe days. A wet cough punctuated her words. But before I go, I need to tell you the truth. All of it. My hand tightened on the phone. I know about my mother, about Isabella Romano and Antonio Moretti. That's not the whole truth. Another cough, more labored. Your father. Isabella confessed to me before she died. She made me promise to tell you when you were old enough. But then Victor's men came looking, and I had to keep you hidden, keep you safe. Who was my father, sister? A man named Marcus Chen. He was Isabella's bodyguard, assigned by Victor to protect her. They fell in love, conceived you in secret. But Marcus was killed by Victor's men when they discovered the affair. Killed 3 months before you were born. Isabella ran to Antonio for protection. Let him claim you as his to keep you safe from her father's rage. Marcus Chen. A name I'd never heard. A man I'd never know. But it explained the features that didn't quite match the Romano or Moretti lines. My height, my coloring, the shape of my eyes. So I'm nobody's heir, I said numbly. Not Moretti, not Romano, just the daughter of a bodyguard and a rebel princess. You're someone, Bella. You're yourself. And the love that created you was real, even if it was forbidden and brief. Sister Margaret's breathing grew more labored. Whatever path you choose now, remember that your mother chose love over duty. She died protecting you from a world that would have destroyed you. Don't let that sacrifice be meaningless. After I hung up, I sat in the silent study for a long time, processing this final revelation. I carried Victor Romano's secrets on my back, but his blood didn't flow in my veins. I was an outsider to the world I'd been thrust into, neither Moretti nor Romano, just Bella Crawford with a treasure map and too many complications. Blake's proposal echoed in my mind. Marriage as protection, as alliance, as business, but also marriage as wanting, as need, as something neither of us was brave enough to call love. I found him in his private gym, working out his obvious frustration on a punching bag with brutal efficiency. Shirtless, muscles coiling and releasing with each strike, he looked like violence barely contained in human form. "I'll marry you," I said from the doorway. He froze mid-punch, turning to face me. Sweat gleamed on his skin, and his chest heaved with exertion. "Just like that?" "Not just like that." I stepped into the room, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "I have conditions." Interest sparked in his gaze. "I'm listening." 1. I want the truth, always. No more revelations that upend my understanding of reality. If you know something about me, my past, my heritage, I deserve to know immediately. Agreed. 2. I won't be a trophy wife or a kept woman. I want real work, real responsibility in your organization. I didn't survive this long to become decorative. A smile tugged at his mouth. Also agreed. You've already proven invaluable. 3. If we have children, they get to choose their own path. No forcing them into the family business. No grooming them for power. They deserve better. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Any children we have will be given every choice I never had. You have my word. And 4. I took a deep breath. Eventually, when the danger passes and we're both secure, if either of us finds this isn't working, we end it civilly. No violence, no retaliation. I won't be trapped in a loveless marriage forever. The softness vanished, replaced by something hard and possessive. You won't want to leave. Blake. I mean it, Bella. You think this is just strategy, just protection. But I told you the truth earlier. I want you. And what I want, I keep. He closed the distance between us, still breathing hard from exertion. But yes, if somehow you genuinely want freedom years from now, I'll let you go. I'm not my father, not Victor Romano. I won't cage something meant to fly. The promise should have comforted me. Instead, it made my heart ache with complicated emotions. Because looking at him, at the fierce intensity in his eyes, the barely restrained desire in his posture, I wasn't sure I'd ever want to leave. Then we have a deal, I whispered. He kissed me then, hard and claiming, tasting of salt and need. His hands found my waist, pulled me flush against his overheated body. I melted into him despite knowing it was reckless. Despite understanding that this kiss was sealing my fate in ways far more permanent than any contract. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Tomorrow night at the gala, I'll announce it. You'll wear the ring that belonged to my grandmother. It's been in the safe, waiting for the right woman. His hands tightened on my hips. And Bella? After the announcement, after we've made this public and binding, I'm not sleeping in the master bedroom alone anymore. Understood? Heat flooded through me at the implication. Understood. Good. He pressed one more kiss to my lips, gentle this time, almost tender. Now go rest. Tomorrow changes everything. As I left the gym, my lips still tingling from his kiss, and my body humming with anticipation and fear, I realized Sister Margaret had been right. My mother had chosen love over duty, had died protecting that choice. Tomorrow I would choose duty masquerading as love, or perhaps it was love masquerading as duty. I honestly couldn't tell anymore. But either way, tomorrow I would become Mrs. Blake Moretti, and the girl who'd danced alone in empty ballrooms would be gone forever. In her place would stand someone new, someone dangerous, someone who carried secrets on her skin and wore a crown of borrowed power. I only hoped that when the transformation was complete, I'd still recognize the woman in the mirror. The Volkov Charity Gala was being held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the entire Temple of Dender wing rented for the evening. Ancient Egyptian architecture provided a dramatic backdrop for New York's elite to peacock in designer gowns, and discuss business over champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's monthly rent. I stood before the full-length mirror in Blake's bedroom. Our bedroom now, though we hadn't yet christened that new reality, and barely recognized myself. The woman reflected back wore a gown of midnight blue silk that clung to every curve before flowing in a waterfall of fabric to the floor. Adriana had outdone herself, somehow knowing that this dress needed to transform me from secretary to soon-to-be Mrs. Blake Moretti. My dark hair was swept up in an elaborate arrangement, with a few strategic tendrils framing my face. Diamond earrings, borrowed from Blake's family vault, glittered at my ears. And on my left hand, heavy and undeniable, sat the engagement ring, a flawless sapphire surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum worn smooth by generations of Moretti women. "You look terrified," Vincent observed from the doorway. He'd been assigned as my personal bodyguard for the evening, a mountain of muscle poured into an elegant tuxedo. "I am terrified," I admitted. "Tonight, Blake announces our engagement to people who'd happily see me dead if it served their interests. Why wouldn't I be terrified?" "Because you're stronger than they know." He moved closer, his expression unusually gentle. "I've worked for Blake for 8 years, Bella. I've seen him with plenty of women, models, heiresses, even a senator's daughter once. He never looked at any of them the way he looks at you. Like I'm a problem to be solved? Like you're the solution he didn't know he needed." Vincent adjusted his cufflinks. "The families respect strength, Bella. Show them you're not a frightened girl playing dress-up. Show them you belong at Blake's side." Before I could respond, Blake himself appeared, and whatever words I'd been forming died on my lips. He wore a black tuxedo that had clearly been tailored specifically for his frame, emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders and the lean power of his build. His dark hair was styled back, revealing the sharp planes of his face, but it was his eyes that captured me, storm gray and intense as he took in my appearance. "Dio mio," he breathed, "you're stunning." Heat flooded my cheeks. Adriana chose well. Adriana had nothing to do with this. He crossed to me, taking my hand and bringing it to his lips. "This is all you, Bella. You've been hiding this under uniforms and fear for too long." The intimacy of the gesture, the raw honesty in his voice, made my heart stutter. This wasn't the calculating businessman or the cold mob boss. This was Blake stripped of his armor, showing me something real. "We should go," I managed, "before I lose my courage." The drive to the museum passed in tense silence. Blake sat beside me in the back of the armored SUV, his hand finding mine in the darkness, fingers intertwining. The touch was meant to be reassuring, but I felt the slight tremor in his grip. He was nervous too, I realized. Whatever happened tonight would set the course for both our futures. The museum's entrance was a circus of photographers and reporters, all hoping to catch shots of New York's elite arriving for the charity event. When our SUV pulled up and the door opened, the camera flashes were blinding. Blake exited first, then turned to offer me his hand. The moment my foot touched the red carpet, the cameras went wild. "Mr. Moretti, who's your date?" "Blake, is it true you've reconciled with the Volkov family?" Miss, what's your name?" Blake's hand was firm at the small of my back as he guided me up the steps. He didn't answer the shouted questions, his face a mask of polite indifference. But I felt the possessiveness in his touch, the subtle claim he was already making. Inside, the Temple of Dender gleamed under strategic lighting. The ancient structure, transplanted from Egypt and reconstructed inside the museum's glass walls, created an atmosphere of timeless power. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played classical music. And everywhere I looked, predators in expensive clothing assessed each other with calculating eyes. "Stay close," Blake murmured in my ear. "And remember, you have nothing to prove to these people. You're already above them, but I didn't feel above anyone. I felt like an imposter, a housemaid playing princess, waiting for someone to point and laugh at the absurdity of my transformation. Blake Moretti. A booming voice cut through my spiraling anxiety. I'd almost given up hope you'd actually attend. The man who approached was perhaps 50, with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of face that appeared friendly until you noticed the coldness in his eyes. Behind him trailed a much younger woman in a gown that left little to imagination, clearly a trophy date, rather than an actual partner. Dimitri. Blake greeted him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. How could I miss such a worthy cause? Indeed. And who is this lovely creature? Dimitri's gaze traveled over me with insulting thoroughness. You've been keeping secrets, Blake. I thought we'd agreed to be more transparent with each other. This is Bella Crawford, Blake said, his voice carrying an edge of warning. My fiancé. The words dropped into the conversation like stones into water, ripples of reaction spreading outward. Dimitri's smile froze. His date's eyes widened. And around us, I felt the shift of attention as other guests registered the announcement. Fiancé, Dimitri repeated slowly. How unexpected. I wasn't aware you were even seeing anyone seriously. I prefer to keep my personal life private until decisions are made. Blake's hand tightened possessively on my waist. But yes, Bella and I are engaged. The wedding will be this spring. Congratulations, Dimitri said, but his eyes were calculating. And what's your background, Miss Crawford? I don't recognize the family name. This was it, the first test. I could feel Blake tense beside me, ready to intervene, but I knew instinctively that I needed to answer for myself. Weakness now would undermine everything. I grew up at St. Catherine's Convent, I said, meeting Dimitri's gaze steadily. No family name to speak of. But Blake seems to think I have other qualities worth valuing. Something flickered in Dimitri's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I'd admit my orphan status so plainly rather than trying to hide it. St. Catherine's, I know it. They do good work with abandoned children. He paused deliberately. Though I'm surprised Blake would choose someone with no connections, no family backing. It's so unlike him to marry for love rather than advantage. The insult was carefully wrapped in polite words, but I heard it clearly. He was calling me worthless, implying Blake had made a foolish, sentimental choice. On the contrary, I replied, keeping my voice light. I think Blake is quite skilled at recognizing advantages others miss. After all, orphans learn to survive in ways that pampered children never need to. We're adaptable, resourceful, and intensely loyal to those who earn our trust. I smiled sweetly. Qualities that serve well in any family business. Blake's hand moved subtly at my back. Approval, support. Dimitri's eyes narrowed fractionally before his jovial mask slipped back into place. Clever girl, he acknowledged. I look forward to getting to know you better, Miss Crawford. Perhaps you and Blake can join us for dinner soon. I find myself very curious about how this romance developed. Of course, Blake said smoothly. We'd be delighted. Now, if you'll excuse us, I see the mayor has arrived, and I promised Bella I'd introduce her. As we moved away, I heard Dimitri's date ask in a loud whisper, An orphan? Seriously? What's Blake thinking? Blake's jaw tightened, but he kept walking until we reached a quieter corner near the reflecting pool surrounding the temple. You did well, he said quietly. Dimitri was testing you, and you passed. He thinks I'm beneath you. They all do. I could feel eyes on us from every direction, could sense the whispered conversations happening behind fans and champagne glasses. Let them think what they want. By the end of tonight, they'll understand that you're under my protection, and that makes you untouchable. He turned to face me fully, his hands cupping my face with unexpected tenderness. I'm going to kiss you now, Bella. Not because I have to, but because I want every person in this room to understand that you're mine." Before I could respond, his lips captured mine in a kiss that was both claiming and cherishing. It was nothing like our fierce encounter in the gym. This was a public declaration, a brand that announced ownership and protection in equal measure. When he finally pulled back, my lips tingled and my body hummed with awareness. The room had gone noticeably quieter, conversations pausing as people registered the public display. Blake Moretti didn't kiss women at charity galas. He didn't show affection openly, which meant this kiss was a statement, and everyone was scrambling to understand what it meant for the delicate balance of power in the city. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. Blake kept me at his side constantly, his hand always touching me somewhere, waist, arm, small of my back. Each touch reinforced the message. This woman is mine, and harming her means war with me. I met police commissioners and judges, CEOs and old money aristocrats, politicians and what I strongly suspected were other crime family leaders. Each conversation was a dance of veiled meanings and careful words, each handshake a test of grip, strength, and eye contact, each smile a calculation of advantage. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Around 10 o'clock, Vincent materialized at Blake's elbow, his expression grave. "We need to talk. Privately." Blake's entire demeanor shifted instantly from charming socialite to dangerous predator. "Where?" "There's a service hallway behind the Egyptian artifacts exhibit. Secure." We followed Vincent through the crowds, slipping away from the party with practiced ease. The service hallway was dimly lit and blessedly quiet after the cacophony of the gala. 2 of Blake's men stood guard at either end, ensuring our privacy. "What's happened?" Blake demanded the moment we were alone. Vincent pulled out his phone, showing us a series of text messages. "Professor Caruso cracked the encryption. She accessed Victor Romano's servers an hour ago." My heart leaped. "What did she find?" "Everything." Vincent's smile was sharp. "Bank account numbers, offshore holdings, evidence of bribes and payoffs going back 30 years. But more importantly," he swiped to another screen, showing what looked like family trees and organizational charts. "Detailed information about every major family operation in the Northeast, including the Volkovs." "What kind of information?" Blake asked, his voice dangerous with anticipation. "The kind that could destroy Dimitri's operation overnight. Evidence of trafficking, money laundering through legitimate businesses, payoff schemes involving federal judges." Vincent looked at me with something like awe. "Your grandfather was meticulous. He documented everything, kept it as insurance. And now it's yours, Bella. All of it." The weight of what he was saying hit me like a physical force. I wasn't just Blake's fiancée, wasn't just a woman with a treasure map on her back. I was now the holder of enough leverage to topple empires, to destroy families, to reshape the entire criminal landscape of New York. "We need to move quickly," Blake said, his mind already working through strategies. "Before anyone else realizes what we've accessed. Vincent, coordinate with our lawyers. I want copies distributed to trusted sources immediately. If something happens to us, the information goes public. That's our insurance." "Already done. I sent encrypted copies to 3 different locations the moment Professor Caruso confirmed the access." Blake nodded approval, then turned to me. "Bella, do you understand what this means? You're not just protected by marriage to me anymore. You're protected by the fact that your death would trigger the release of information that would destroy dozens of powerful people. You're safer than you've ever been." "Or more valuable as a target," I countered. "If they can get to me, control me, force me to give them exclusive access to the information." "They can't get to you." His hands found my shoulders, fierce and possessive. "I won't let them. And now, with this leverage, we can eliminate the threats permanently. Dimitri, the others who've been circling, they'll have to back off or risk exposure." A commotion from the direction of the gala interrupted us. Raised voices, the sound of something breaking. Blake's men immediately moved to defensive positions, hands reaching inside their jackets for weapons they'd somehow smuggled past museum security. "Stay here," Blake ordered, already moving toward the noise. But I was done staying in safe places while others fought my battles. I followed, ignoring Vincent's protest, arriving back at the party just in time to see Dmitry Volkov standing in the center of the room, his jovial mask completely discarded. "Fascinating timing," he was saying, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. "Blake Moretti announces his engagement to a mysterious orphan, and within hours, my private servers are hacked. Quite the coincidence." Blake stepped forward, his posture relaxed but emanating threat. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Dmitry. Perhaps you should invest in better cybersecurity." "Don't play games with me!" Dmitry's control was slipping, vodka and rage loosening his tongue. "That orphan of yours isn't what she seems. She's Victor Romano's granddaughter, isn't she? The one who disappeared as a baby. And she carries something that belongs to my family, too." The room erupted in whispered conversation. My secret identity, laid bare for everyone to hear. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as dozens of eyes turned to assess me with new understanding. But Blake simply smiled, cold and predatory. Even if any of that were true, which I neither confirm nor deny, it wouldn't matter. Bella is under my protection as my fiancé. Threatening her means going to war with the Morettis. Is that really what you want, Dmitry? In front of all these witnesses? "I want what's mine," Dmitry shouted. "Victor Romano stole from my family, from all our families. Whatever information he hid, it belongs to the Commission, not to some bastard orphan who got lucky." The slur against me was the final straw. I felt Blake tense, preparing to respond with violence. But I stepped forward first, surprising everyone, including myself. "You want what Victor Romano hid?" My voice was clear and steady despite my racing heart. "Fine. Let me tell you what I found. Evidence of your trafficking operation in Brighton Beach. Documents proving you've been skimming from the Commission for 8 years. Photographs of your meetings with Federal Prosecutor Chen, the same prosecutor who's supposedly investigating your family." I smiled, channeling every ounce of confidence I didn't feel. "Shall I continue? Because I have 30 years of your family's secrets, Dmitry. All carefully documented by a paranoid old man who trusted no one." The color drained from Dmitry's face. Around us, other family leaders were watching with predatory interest, scenting blood in the water. If I had evidence of Dmitry's betrayals, his power would crumble. "You're bluffing," he said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. "Am I?" I pulled out my phone. Vincent had sent me the files before we'd returned to the party, and displayed a single photograph. Dmitry meeting with Prosecutor Chen in what was clearly a clandestine location, money changing hands. The image was damning, final, absolute. Dmitry stared at the photograph, then at me, then at Blake. Understanding and fear warred on his face. "If you release that, you'll start a war." "Then don't give me a reason to release it," I said quietly. "Leave me alone. Leave Blake alone. Accept that some secrets are better left buried, and maybe, I'll extend you the same courtesy Victor Romano never did." The standoff stretched for eternal seconds. Then Dmitry nodded once, sharp and bitter. "This isn't over." "Yes," Blake said, his voice hard. "It is. Touch what's mine, Dmitry, and I'll destroy everything you've built. That's not a threat. It's a promise." Dmitry turned and stalked out, his trophy date scrambling to follow. The tension in the room didn't dissipate so much as transform, shifting from immediate danger to calculating reassessment. Every person at this gala now understood that I wasn't just Blake Moretti's fiancé. I was a power in my own right, wielding information that could topple dynasties. Blake's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine. "Time to go home," he murmured. "You've made your point. Any longer, and we're tempting fate." The drive back to the penthouse was silent, but it was a different silence than earlier. Blake's hand stayed locked with mine, his thumb tracing small circles on my palm. When we finally reached the safety of the penthouse, with security sweeping every room before allowing us to enter, the adrenaline that had sustained me through the evening finally crashed. I collapsed onto the living room sofa, my hands shaking with delayed reaction. I just threatened Dmitry Volkov in front of half of New York's power structure. You did. Blake poured whiskey for both of us, pressing a glass into my trembling hands. You were magnificent. I was terrified. Fear and courage aren't opposites, Bella. Courage is acting despite the fear. He sat beside me, close enough that our bodies touched. You showed them tonight that you're not a victim to be pitied or a pawn to be controlled. You're a queen, and queens don't apologize for their power. I laughed weakly. A queen with a treasure map on her back and enemies circling. Some fairy tale. The best ones usually are. His hand cupped my face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. You were incredible tonight. Not just during the confrontation, but all evening. The way you handled Dimitri's initial test. The way you moved through that room like you'd always belonged there. You're adapting to this world faster than anyone I've ever seen. I had good motivation. I set down my whiskey, suddenly needing both hands free for what I wanted to say. Blake, about this engagement, about us. I need to know. Is this still just strategy for you? Because after tonight, after everything we've been through, I need more than... He kissed me, cutting off my rambling words with fierce intensity. This wasn't the public display from the gala or the claiming kiss from the gym. This was desperate and real, all pretense stripped away. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Does that feel like just strategy? I don't know, I admitted. I've never felt anything like this before. I don't know if it's real or if I'm just confused by everything happening so fast. Then let me be clear. His hands moved to frame my face, forcing me to hold his gaze. I want you, Bella. Not your information, not your leverage, not your usefulness. You. The woman who danced alone in an empty ballroom. The woman who stood up to Dmitry Volkov with her voice shaking but her spine straight. The woman who's somehow become essential to my existence in the span of weeks. His voice dropped to a rasp. I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me because in my world, love is a weakness that gets exploited. But I can't seem to stop. The raw honesty in his confession made my chest ache. I'm falling too, I whispered. And it terrifies me because I've never belonged anywhere. Never been anyone's choice. What if you wake up one day and realize I'm not enough? Not enough? His laugh was sharp, almost pained. Bella, you're too much. Too brave. Too smart. Too beautiful. Too everything. You've turned my carefully controlled world upside down, and I should hate that. But instead, I can't imagine going back to what I was before you. He stood suddenly, pulling me up with him. Come with me. He led me through the penthouse to the master bedroom. Our bedroom now, though we hadn't discussed the sleeping arrangement since the engagement. The room was masculine and elegant, all dark woods and muted colors, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the glittering city below. Blake moved to the windows, his back to me, tension visible in every line of his body. After my father died, I promised myself I'd never be vulnerable like he was. He loved your mother, loved her so much it destroyed his judgment. When she died, part of him died too. He was never the same. I saw what love did to him, how it weakened him, and I vowed never to let it happen to me. He turned to face me, and in the ambient light from the city, his eyes were silver and fierce. But you've made me break that vow, Bella. You've made me want things I'd given up on. A real partnership, not just an alliance. Children who are loved, not just groomed for succession. A life that's more than power and paranoia. My heart thundered against my ribs as he crossed back to me, his hands finding my waist. So yes, this started as strategy. But it stopped being just strategy the moment you looked at Dmitry Volkov and refused to be intimidated. The moment you showed me you could stand beside me, not behind me. The moment I realized that protecting you wasn't duty, it was necessity. Because the thought of anything happening to you makes me capable of burning this entire city down. Blake, I breathed, overwhelmed by the intensity of his words, his presence, the heat building between us. Tell me you want this, he demanded, his voice rough. Not the engagement, not the protection. This, us. Tell me I'm not alone in this insanity. You're not alone. I reached up, my hands finding the strong column of his neck. I want this. I want you. Even though it's reckless and dangerous, and probably a terrible idea. His mouth crashed down on mine, and this time there was no restraint, no public performance, no strategic calculation. This was pure need, raw and honest and consuming. His hands moved to the zipper of my gown, sliding it down with aching slowness, while his mouth traced fire along my jaw, down my neck, across my collarbone. The gown pooled at my feet, leaving me in only the silk slip beneath. Blake's hands trembled slightly as they traced the curve of my waist, the swell of my hips. You're so beautiful it hurts to look at you, he murmured against my skin. I tugged at his bow tie, fumbling with the unfamiliar mechanism until he helped me, both of us laughing breathlessly at my inexperience. His jacket followed, then his shirt, revealing the sculpted planes of his chest and abdomen. I'd seen him shirtless before in the gym, but this was different. This was permission to touch, to explore, to claim him the way he was claiming me. My fingers traced the scars I found, evidence of a violent life lived in shadows. A puckered mark on his shoulder that looked like a bullet wound. A long thin line across his ribs from a blade, evidence of survival, of battles fought and won. My world has marked you, I said softly, tracing another scar. And yours has marked you, he replied, his hands moving to my back, fingers ghosting over the raised tissue of the map inscribed on my skin. But we're both still here, still fighting. That's what matters. He lifted me then, carrying me to the massive bed with an ease that made me feel simultaneously cherished and claimed. The sheets were cool silk against my heated skin as he laid me down, his body covering mine with delicious weight. What followed was both fierce and tender, a claiming that went beyond the physical. Blake worshipped every inch of exposed skin with his mouth and hands, learning what made me gasp and arch and plead. And when we finally joined, when he filled me completely and began to move with devastating precision, I understood that this wasn't just sex or strategy or even love in its simplest form. This was recognition. Two damaged souls finding completion in each other. Two people who'd learned to survive alone, discovering they were stronger together. Afterward, we lay tangled in expensive sheets, my head on his chest, and his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare shoulder. The city glittered beyond the windows like a constellation brought to earth, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Tomorrow the entire city will know about Victor's information, Blake said quietly. The families will be scrambling to protect themselves, to hide evidence or destroy connections. It will be chaos. Are we ready for that? We have to be. His arms tightened around me. But Bella, I need you to understand something. What we've started tonight, exposing the Volkovs, claiming Victor's legacy, it's going to have consequences. People will try to get to us, to use us against each other. The next few weeks will test everything we've built. Then we face it together. I propped myself up on my elbow to look at him. That's what this means, right? Partners. Not just in business or strategy, but in everything. He smiled, rare and genuine. Partners, he agreed. In everything. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, while outside the penthouse walls, the city we'd just fundamentally disrupted continued its restless dance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new complications. But tonight, for the first time since dancing alone in an empty ballroom, I felt like I'd finally found where I belonged. In the arms of a man as dangerous as he was devoted. In a world as terrifying as it was exhilarating. In a love that had started as strategy and transformed into something far more powerful and permanent. The web had closed around us both, but instead of feeling trapped, I felt anchored. Strong, ready. Whatever came next, we would face it together, and God help anyone who tried to tear us apart. The morning after the gala dawned gray and cold, winter asserting itself over the city with icy determination. I woke to find Blake already up, standing by the windows in nothing but sleep pants, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in rapid Italian. The tension in his shoulders told me the chaos he'd predicted was already beginning. I slipped from the bed, wrapping myself in his discarded shirt, a gesture that felt both intimate and necessary, and moved to stand beside him. His free arm immediately wrapped around my waist, pulling me close as he continued his conversation. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Damage control, strategic maneuvering, the careful dance of power reasserting itself after disruption. When he finally ended the call, he pressed a kiss to my temple. "Good morning, Mrs. Moretti." The title wasn't official yet, but the way he said it made it sound inevitable. "What's happening?" "Everything and nothing." He set down his phone and turned to face me fully, his hands cupping my face. Dimitri is in full panic mode. He's calling meetings, demanding explanations, trying to rally support. But the other families are staying quiet, waiting to see which way the wind blows. And us? We're hosting a brunch here, noon. The commission members who matter, plus a few key players who've been neutral until now. His thumb traced my cheekbone. It's time to make our position clear. Not just about the Volkovs, but about you. About what you represent. The commission. I'd heard references to it in whispered conversations, but Blake had never explained it fully. Tell me about the commission. If I'm going to face them, I need to understand the structure. Blake guided me to the living room, where someone, probably one of his staff who moved through the penthouse like ghosts, had already prepared coffee and breakfast. As we settled on the sofa, he began explaining the intricate web of power that governed New York's underworld. The commission is 5 families, originally 6 before the Romanos were eliminated. Each family controls different territories and operations. The Morettis handle real estate and legitimate business fronts. The Volkovs run imports in the harbor districts. The Cartellis control the restaurant and entertainment industries. The Russos handle construction and unions. And the Santoros manage political connections and legal manipulation. And Victor Romano? The Romanos were information brokers. They didn't run traditional operations. They gathered intelligence, sold secrets, brokered deals between families. That's why your grandfather's hidden servers are so valuable. They contain leverage over everyone. So by controlling that information, I'm essentially stepping into the Romano seat at the commission. Blake's smile was sharp with pride. Exactly. You're not just my fiancé. You're a power broker in your own right, and today, we make that official. The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Adriana arrived with additional wardrobe options. Apparently, a commission meeting required different attire than a charity gala. I was dressed in a tailored cream suit that managed to be both elegant and commanding, with my hair pulled back severely to emphasize my bone structure. The sapphire engagement ring caught the light with every movement, a constant reminder of my new status. Blake's staff transformed the penthouse dining room into a formal meeting space. Vincent coordinated security sweeps and positioned guards at strategic locations. And I tried very hard not to vomit from nerves. "You'll be fine," Blake assured me for the dozenth time, adjusting his own tie with practiced ease. "Remember what I taught you. Show strength, never apologize, and always speak from a position of power." What if they reject me? What if they refuse to recognize my claim to the Romano seat? Then they lose access to information that could destroy them. His eyes were hard. "They need you more than you need them, Bella. Never forget that." The doorbell chimed at precisely noon, and Vincent ushered in the first guests. Carmine Cartelli arrived with his eldest son, both wearing the kind of expensive casual clothing that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. Marco Russo followed, younger than I expected, with calculating eyes that missed nothing. Then came Sofia Santoro, the only woman to lead a commission family, elegant and terrifying in equal measure. They arranged themselves around the dining table with the ease of long practice, leaving conspicuous gaps, one for Dmitry Volkov, who was notably absent, and one for the Romano representative who hadn't existed in 25 years. "Shall we wait for Dmitry?" Carmine asked, his voice carrying the hint of a Sicilian accent. "No," Blake said simply. "He was invited. He chose not to attend. That's his prerogative." "And his mistake," Sophia added, her sharp eyes fixing on me with predatory interest. "So this is the famous Bella Crawford. Or should I say, Isabella Romano's daughter?" "Bella is fine," I said, keeping my voice steady as I took the empty Romano seat. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. I was claiming my birthright in front of witnesses who could either support or destroy me. Marco leaned back in his chair, studying me like a particularly interesting puzzle. "I'll admit, I'm curious. Blake announces his engagement to a nobody, and within hours, the Volkov operation is exposed. Either you're incredibly lucky or incredibly dangerous." "Both, perhaps," I replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I didn't choose to be Victor Romano's granddaughter any more than I chose to carry his secrets. But I won't apologize for using the tools I've been given." "Tools?" Sophia repeated thoughtfully. "Is that what you call information that could destroy this entire commission?" "I call it insurance," I corrected. "Victor Romano didn't trust any of you. He documented everything, every deal, every betrayal, every secret you thought was buried. He did it because he knew someday his family would need protection. And now I'm that family." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Carmine laughed, a genuine sound of appreciation. "She has spine, I'll give her that. Not many people would walk into a room with the commission and threaten them so elegantly." "I'm not threatening anyone," I said carefully. "I'm proposing an arrangement. I hold information that could benefit us all if used wisely, or destroy us all if released carelessly. I'm willing to become the information broker the Romanos once were, gathering intelligence, facilitating communication between families, ensuring that secrets stay buried. But I need something in return." "And what's that?" Marco asked. "Recognition, protection. A seat at this table, not as Blake's fiancé, but as the Romano representative." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "And your oath that any threat to me is treated as a threat to the commission itself." The implications were staggering. If they agreed, I wouldn't just be protected by Blake's power. I'd be protected by all 5 families, untouchable in a way that even marriage couldn't guarantee. "That's a significant ask," Sophia observed, "especially from someone so new to our world." "The ask is proportional to what I offer," I countered. "Victor's servers contain information worth billions. Access to politicians, judges, federal agents on payrolls. Evidence that could bring down legitimate businesses you all use for laundering. Blackmail material on everyone from senators to police chiefs." I pulled out a tablet, displaying the index of files we'd compiled. "This is power," and I'm offering to wield it for the Commission's benefit. But only if you protect me while I do." Blake remained silent throughout, letting me make my own case. I could feel his pride in the way he watched me, but also his tension. If this went wrong, if they rejected my proposal, everything we'd built would crumble. Carmine was the first to speak. "I knew Victor Romano. He was a paranoid bastard, but he was thorough. If his granddaughter has inherited even a fraction of his cunning." He looked at the others. "I vote to recognize the Romano claim." "Seconded," Marco said after a pause, "though I want assurances that this information won't be used against the Commission itself." "The information protects the Commission," I assured him. "As long as we're all on the same side, everyone's secrets stay buried. But it also means no one moves against another family without consequences. Victor's files create a form of mutually assured destruction that keeps everyone honest. Or keeps everyone trapped," Sophia said dryly, but she nodded. "Still, it's better than the chaos of the past years. I vote to recognize." Marco turned to the empty Volkov seat. "And Dmitri?" "The Volkovs have the most to lose from my recognition," I said bluntly. "Victor's files on them are particularly damning, but that's precisely why they need to agree. Oppose me, and that information goes public. Work with me, and it stays buried." "Dmitri isn't known for rational decision-making when his pride is involved," Carmine observed. "This could get messy." As if summoned by the discussion, the penthouse doors burst open. Dmitri Volkov stormed in, flanked by 2 of his men, his face flushed with rage, and what I suspected was morning vodka. "This is a farce," he shouted, pointing an accusing finger at me. "You're trying to legitimize a nobody, a servant girl who got lucky finding Victor's files. She has no training, no family, no right to sit at this table." Blake rose slowly, his movement predatory. "You're in my home, Dmitri. I'd suggest you remember your manners." "Manners?" Dmitri laughed harshly. "You want to talk about manners when you're trying to force this child onto the Commission? She's not Romano, not really. Victor's daughter married your father. That makes her connection to the family illegitimate at best." "My mother was Isabella Romano," I said, standing to face him. My voice was calm despite the fury burning in my chest. "My grandfather was Victor Romano. The blood is legitimate, even if my father was an outsider. But blood isn't what matters here, Dmitri. Power matters. And I hold power over you, over all of you. The question is whether you're smart enough to accept that reality." His face purpled with rage. "You think you can threaten me? You think your files scare me? I know they do." I pulled out my phone, navigating to a specific file. "Would you like me to share with everyone here the details of your deal with the Serbian traffickers? The ones you told the Commission you'd rejected? Or perhaps the offshore accounts you've been using to skim from shared operations? I have bank statements, Dmitri. Transaction records. Everything." The room went very, very quiet. The other Commission members stared at Dmitri with new understanding and new calculation. If he'd been stealing from shared operations, he'd been stealing from all of them. "You're bluffing," Dmitri said, but his voice had lost its strength. I sent the file to the television mounted on the wall, displaying bank records for everyone to see. Numbers didn't lie, and these numbers told a story of systematic betrayal. Marco stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Is this true, Dmitri? Have you been skimming from the harbor operations?" "She's manipulating you," Dmitri protested. "Those files could be faked." "They're not," Sophia said quietly, studying the records with the eye of someone who understood financial crimes intimately. "I recognize some of these account numbers. We've been tracking anomalies in the Harbor District books for 2 years. This explains everything." The tide had turned. I could see it in the faces around the table. Dmitri had just gone from powerful ally to liability, and in this world, liabilities were eliminated. I propose a vote, Carmine said, his voice hard. Not just on recognizing Bella Crawford as the Romano representative, but on the status of the Volkov family seat. Dmitri has violated commission rules by stealing from shared operations. The penalty for that is expulsion and seizure of territory. Seconded, Marco said immediately. You can't do this! Dmitri moved toward me, rage overcoming sense. This is her fault. She's the one who should be eliminated. Blake moved faster than I'd ever seen him move, intercepting Dmitri before he'd taken 3 steps. What happened next was brutal and efficient. Blake's fist connected with Dmitri's solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs, then swept his legs, sending him crashing to the floor. Within seconds, Vincent and 2 other guards had Dmitri restrained, his arms pinned behind his back. You made a critical error, Dmitri, Blake said, his voice cold and deadly. You threatened what's mine, in my home, in front of witnesses who will remember this. The vote, Sophia prompted, as if watching a man be restrained was completely ordinary, which, in their world, it probably was. All in favor of recognizing Bella Crawford as the Romano representative? Carmine called. 4 hands rose, Carmine, Marco, Sophia, and Blake. And all in favor of expelling Dmitri Volkov from the Commission for Theft and Betrayal? 4 hands rose again. It's decided then, Carmine said with finality. Bella Crawford is recognized as the Romano representative. Dmitri Volkov is expelled, and his territories will be redistributed among the remaining families. He looked at Dmitri with something almost like pity. You had a good run, Dmitri. But you forgot the most important rule. The commission survives. Individuals don't. Vincent hauled Dmitri to his feet, dragging him toward the door while he shouted threats and curses in Russian and English. I watched him go, feeling neither triumph nor guilt. This was the world I'd stepped into. Brutal, efficient, governed by rules I was still learning. After he was gone, the atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. The remaining commission members looked at me with new respect, tinged with wariness. I'd proven I could be ruthless when necessary, that I understood how to wield power without hesitation. Well, Sophia said finally, a small smile playing at her lips. Welcome to the commission, Bella. Try not to destroy us all with Victor's secrets. I'll do my best, I replied, managing to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through my system. The brunch that followed was surreal. Casual conversation about territory divisions and profit sharing, as if we hadn't just expelled a commission member and upended the power structure of the entire city. But I participated, offering insights when asked, learning the subtle dynamics between families that would govern my new role. By the time the last guest departed, I was exhausted. Blake found me standing at the windows, staring out at the city that had been reshaped by a single morning's work. You did it, he said quietly, his arms wrapping around me from behind. You claimed your birthright and emerged stronger than anyone expected. I destroyed a man's empire before lunch, I replied, my voice hollow. And I barely felt anything. That's how you survive in this world. His lips found my temple. You can't afford guilt or hesitation. Dmitri would have killed you without a second thought if he'd had the chance. You simply struck first. Is this who I am now? I turned in his arms to face him. Someone who ruins lives with spreadsheets and bank statements? You're someone who protects what's hers, he corrected. Someone who understands that power unused is power lost. And yes, someone who will have to make hard choices and live with the consequences. His hands framed my face. But you're not alone in that, Bella. Whatever you become, whoever this world shapes you into, I'll be beside you. We're partners, remember? I nodded, leaning into his strength. The girl who danced alone in an empty ballroom felt like a distant memory, someone I'd left behind in my transformation. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, more dangerous. But as Blake held me, as the city glittered below us like a kingdom we'd conquered together, I realized I wasn't sorry for the transformation. This was survival in its purest form. Adapting, evolving, becoming what you needed to be to protect what mattered. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now?" He smiled against my hair. "Now we get married, properly, publicly, with all the families in attendance. We solidify your position, formalize our alliance, and make it clear that the Moretti-Romano partnership is unbreakable. And after that, we build something new. Not just survival, but empire. You as the information broker, me as the executive power. Together, we could reshape this entire city." His eyes gleamed with dangerous possibility. Victor Romano's legacy, combined with Moretti's strength and resources. Can you imagine what we could accomplish? I could. And the vision was both terrifying and exhilarating. The ballroom of the Grand Moretti Hotel gleamed with golden light, crystal chandeliers casting rainbows across marble floors where 100 guests danced and laughed and celebrated. It was the annual charity gala, but this year's event was different. This year I stood at the center of it all, not cleaning up after the party but hosting it. Mrs. Bella Moretti, the placard at the entrance read. Founder, the Romano Foundation for Orphaned Children. The foundation had been Blake's wedding gift to me, a trust funded with a portion of Victor Romano's recovered fortune, dedicated to ensuring that children like I'd been would have opportunities I'd never dreamed of. Education, healthcare, mentorship programs, college scholarships. Everything I'd wished for during lonely nights at St. Catherine's. "You're radiant," Sophia Santoro observed, appearing at my elbow with champagne. She'd become an unexpected ally over the past year, teaching me the intricacies of commission politics with the same ruthless efficiency she applied to everything. "I'm pregnant," I admitted, though we hadn't announced it publicly yet. "Morning sickness is a lie. It's all-day nausea." She laughed, genuine and warm. "Congratulations. Blake must be insufferable with excitement. You have no idea." I smiled despite myself, thinking of Blake's reaction when I'd shown him the positive test 2 weeks ago. He'd been terrified and thrilled in equal measure, immediately adding 3 more security guards and making me promise to reduce my travel schedule. Across the room, I spotted him in conversation with Carmine and Marco, the 3 men looking for all the world like legitimate businessmen discussing real estate, rather than the crime lords they actually were. Blake felt my gaze and looked up, his gray eyes finding mine across the crowded ballroom. The smile he gave me was soft, private, meant only for me. 1 year of marriage, and I still felt that flutter in my chest when he looked at me like that. "He's completely besotted," Sophia observed. "It's actually rather sweet. I didn't think Blake Moretti was capable of that kind of devotion." "Neither did he," I replied. "We've both surprised ourselves." The past year had been a whirlwind of transformation. The Romano seat at the commission was mine, indisputable and secure. I'd proven myself invaluable as an information broker, facilitating deals and preventing conflicts before they escalated. The files Victor had left me remained powerful insurance, but I'd also built my own network of sources and contacts. The threats against me had evaporated once it became clear that my death would trigger the release of information devastating to dozens of powerful people. Dmitry Volkov had attempted one last desperate play 6 months ago, hiring assassins to storm the penthouse. They'd been intercepted by Vincent's security team before getting within 50 feet of me. Dmitry himself had disappeared shortly after. Blake insisted he knew nothing about it, but I suspected otherwise, and chose not to ask questions I didn't want answers to. Some things were better left in shadow. "The ceremony is about to start," Blake said, materializing beside me and pressing a kiss to my temple. "Are you ready?" Tonight was more than just a charity gala. We were officially unveiling the foundation, announcing scholarships for 25 children from St. Catherine's and other orphanages across the city. Sister Margaret hadn't lived to see it. She'd passed peacefully 3 months after our engagement, but I like to think she'd be proud. As we moved to the small stage erected in the ballroom, I caught sight of my reflection in one of the mirrors. The woman looking back bore little resemblance to the maid who danced alone a year ago. Designer gown, professional styling, diamond jewelry that represented not decoration, but power. Yet beneath the polish and transformation, I was still fundamentally myself, still Bella, still learning, still adapting. Blake's hand found mine as we faced the crowd, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that had become automatic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the room. "Thank you for joining us tonight. My wife has something important to share." I stepped forward, my free hand resting instinctively on my still flat abdomen where our child grew. A year ago, I was nobody, an orphan working as a maid, invisible to most of you. But someone saw me. I looked at Blake, saw potential where others saw only service. He gave me opportunities I'd never imagined, and in doing so, taught me that where you start doesn't dictate where you end up. The crowd was silent, attentive. I recognized faces from the commission, from Blake's legitimate businesses, from the city's political structure. All of them listening to an orphan maid turned mob princess speak about transformation. The Romano Foundation exists because I remember what it's like to be invisible. To wonder if anyone would ever see you as more than your circumstances. These 25 scholarships are just the beginning. By next year, we'll triple that number. By the year after, triple it again. I smiled, feeling Blake's support radiating beside me. Because every child deserves the chance to dance in ballrooms instead of cleaning them. Every child deserves to be seen. The applause was thunderous, and as Blake pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my lips while cameras flashed and the crowd cheered, I understood that this was my fairy tale ending. Not perfect, not conventional, but real. Built on dangerous foundations and shadowy power, yes, but also on genuine love and mutual respect, and the fierce determination to be more than what the world expected. The girl who danced alone in an empty ballroom was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd learned to waltz with danger itself, and emerged not just surviving, but thriving. Mrs. Bella Moretti, information broker, philanthropist, soon-to-be mother, and above all, partner to a man as dangerous as he was devoted. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined for myself. It was better.